All right, so this is RSM 308. Continuing talking about some of the foundations and kind of the philosophies of what sport is, and we mentioned in our previous talks about sport as a means for development, and we talked about social development, human development, economic development, all those physical development. Today, kind of we're looking at that human social side of development and looking at how sport can be used in that role. For us in our recreational sport, this becomes very important because a lot of times we look at recreational sport being focused on youth, and while that's true and it does focus on all age groups, we want to look at how we can use sport for development and what's kind of the belief behind using sport as development. So one of the things you can look at is this BBP or OBP, which is basically just benefits-based programming or objectives-based programming. Okay, benefits-based programming or objective-based programming, and the idea is that when we focus our activities on the benefits that they're producing or the objectives that we're trying to reach, then that helps us design and deliver our programs in a manner that we can reach those goals and objectives that we have set forth, or those benefits that we have set forth, which in turn we can measure, we can evaluate, and then we can validate the specific individual social, economic, or environmental attributes that we're trying to improve. So, throughout your time probably with us in RSM, we've talked to you and harped to you over and over again about objectives and building objectives. Well, this is a key element if we're going to show that development, whatever realm it's in. We have to set objectives to help show that we've reached those, and then in turn validate that, yeah, we are actually doing what we say we're doing, and accountability becomes so important. So if we're going to say, hey, we're producing this many or this amount of money from tourism coming in for sport, we have to back that up with the numbers, and we have to show those numbers to help validate the significance role that sport plays. We can also do it focused on our participants and showing the change that's taking place in our participant in multiple range, right? We talk in leadership about the different realms of learning, right? So you have that psychomotor, you have the affective, and then you have the cognitive, right? So we can show the change that's taking place, that development that's taking place in all three of them. So think about benefits-based or objective-based programming, and that helps to show that development that takes place. And so one of the frameworks that we look at is the basically youth development, and the PYD framework is basically looking at positive youth development, right? We want to develop our young people, okay? And so this is just focused on young people, but again, we can see changes taking across all age groups. In this framework that was created, there's, if you look on that left side of it, it's protective factors, resiliency. And resiliency basically just means how well a person can deal with challenges in life. We all have challenges. Right now we're going through a big challenge right in our lives, and it leaves us asking a lot of questions about our beliefs and what way we see things. And resiliency is how well we can deal with that. Okay, a resilient individual has the capacity to deal with challenges in their life really well. You see that all the time. You have those people that seem like they get stronger with the challenges when challenges are thrown their way, and then those that are kind of crumple because of the challenges and don't know how to handle it. Well, that's resiliency. Okay. Risk factors are those circumstances or characteristics that lead to problem behaviors. Okay. So as young people, you've been confronted throughout your life with a lot of kind of decisions that you've had to make, where you had to make a choice, and some of the choices were maybe positive and some of them weren't. Okay, what we we have to be aware of what those risk factors are that can lead to problem behavior. And maybe it's feeling that you don't belong, or feeling like that you're, not living up, or feeling like no one cares. Okay, those are risk factors that can potentially lead to problem behavior. Sometimes socioeconomic circumstances put us in tough situations. Sometimes the opposite. Having a lot of money can be a challenge sometimes, because you may have the opportunity to make poor decisions, just spending more money while you're making those poor decisions, right? So risk behaviors are negative. They're harmful. They're undesirable behaviors that youth make, and choices that they make that lead into those behaviors. So protective factors are those circumstances that help to support the development of resiliency. And here we see that, hey, sport probably has that element to it. It helps us deal with adversity. It helps us deal with issues and do it in a positive manner, a socially acceptable manner, and helps us kind of learn ways to become resilient. Helps us set up those protective factors. Okay? Gosh, I see, several of you have mentioned baseball and working with baseball. Baseball, most of what you do in baseball, you're gonna fail at, basically, right? A good batting average is 300. That means you fail 7 times out of 10. Okay, so we have to be resilient. We have to come up with ways to deal with that, and that's one of the things that sport allows us to do. And so we can see sport as a means to help with that positive youth development. There's based upon some of the research that was done by Peter Benson and the Search Institute, they came up with 40 developmental assets. Okay, and these 40 developmental assets focus on youth development, and it's a strength-based approach to youth development. So these 40 assets are critical for benchmarking, strengthening youth success. Benchmarks, another word for objectives, points that we want to get to, places where we can measure how successful young people are. And those assets demonstrate important roles for families, schools, congregations, neighborhoods, youth organizations, others in the young people's lives. Okay, and so what's our role here? Youth organizations, people that plan the sporting activities that these young people are taking place in and taking part in. Okay. One of the things, this is the percent of violent crimes committed by hour of the day while school is in session. And you can see, okay, while school is in session, it's kind of not too bad. But then, boom, as soon as school gets out, it jumps up to 12%, and then it slowly works its way down. And this is just all juveniles. Okay. While the data is a little outdated from 1997, it shows you sometimes how the structure of school can help to minimize some of the issues that we run into. But this time of basically school out 3 o'clock, 3:30 to 8 o'clock, a good bit of stuff going on. And interesting, it kind of drops down as the evening goes on, and going to bed, and eventually back down below what it was while in school. But that structure, that having influence, this positive influence, can help minimize some of this. And so as we look at some of the protective factors, we mentioned protective factors. Protective factors just include safe place to play, kind of in our realm, safe place to play. Do they feel safe where they are? It's hard to build that resiliency if you don't feel safe when you're going out and playing. And it's hard to focus on participation and learning those lessons that are outlined by the sport when you're not feeling safe. Positive role models. Do you have positive role models to look up to? Probably most of you could look at one of your coaches throughout your life and saying they had a positive influence on you, whether they were a mentor as well as a coach, or just that person that you could look to get, you knew that you were going to get straight answers, knew they were going to point you in the right direction, and knew that you really cared. They really cared about you. And so that's one thing to keep in mind when you look at sport. The value of achievement. Sport gives you that opportunity for achievement. Sometimes school may not be the place that you achieve, but on the playing fields are the place that you achieved, and that's good. It helps build up that protective factors. A sense of acceptance, and people. That's a great thing about team. People accept you for who you are and what you can do. Okay. An ability to work with others, another important aspect of team. You have to learn roles and what role you play, and making sure that you help the team by fulfilling that role. Okay? And there's plenty of opportunities for sport-based interventions to help build these factors. Right? We see it all the time. This is a youth program that serves at-risk youth. And there's usually development for or opportunities for not only on the court development but off the court development in this case. Okay. So the National Federation of High School did a study, and they came up with basically some assets. And these assets kind of fell into three types of categories. The first one was basic participation in sport, and there's kind of 4 different assets within that basic participation. So basic participation, that low level or kind of that second tier, probably going up to the third tier of participation in sport that we showed earlier in the semester. Fifth is that high tier sports program that go beyond teaching skills and strategies and competition. And then the last one is special programs or strategies. So I'm going to show these to you and break them down a little bit more to you so you can see that through. But this all came from asset building through sport program. Okay, what's the asset? Kind of you in personal assets and building up these individuals. So developing these assets and qualities requires being intentional. The coach, other adults, and young people involved in these activities must make a conscious choice to develop particular quality, and then select specific strategies that can be used to promote that quality, right? So it might be that protective factors, resiliency, but it can be some other ones that we'll take a look at in developing individuals through sport. Okay? And so condition 1, and again, going back to that previous slide, that condition 1 of those 4 assets that dealt with basic skills, right? Basic skill development. So this is an example of basic skill development in soccer. And these little whippersnappers are out there running around, just learning how to kick the ball and learning how to, what the field's like and those type of things. They get an introduction to the game. They get the basic rules. They get the very basic strategies. That's kind of that first 4 assets that we talked about, kind of just the basics right there. Condition 2 includes condition 1 and reinforcement of it, making it stronger, making better understanding. But then we also look at what's the academic achievement that goes along with it. What about positive behavior and sportsmanship? So now we're not only focusing on the psycho dimension, the psychomotor dimension that we talk about, and skill acquisition, but then we're also shifting over to the cognitive side in learning what are the academic side and learning the rules and guidelines and beliefs. But then you're also moving into the affective within sportsmanship's feelings, emotions. Okay, we're going to stop here and we're going to pick up the rest of the condition 3, and continue looking at development from this point on.